Good evening. Today is Monday.
No, we're still not live. Just a second.
On my screen, it says live on YouTube.
It does? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. Today is Monday, August 10th, 2020. Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of the Oregon City Council. Let's begin tonight's meeting by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
and to
republic
the republic
for
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for attendance?
Mr. Davish,
Here.
Mr. Horniak,
Here.
Mrs. Pawlov,
Here.
Mr. Reeves,
Here.
Mr. Seaman,
Here.
Mr. Wallenzek,
Here.
Mr. Zale.
Here,
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Also joining us this evening, our Clerk of Council, Ms. Tina Evans, Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator, Mr. Michael Beasley, Law Director, Melissa Purpura, the Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman, Deputy Finance Director, Darlene Huntermark, our Fire Chief, Danny Hartman, Assistant Fire Chief, Mark Mullins, Police Chief, Mr. Michael Navarre, and our IT Director, Ms. Karis Dykma. Council, the first order of business this evening would be the approval of the meeting minutes from the July 27th, 2020 regular meeting of council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented from the July 27th, 2020 regular council meeting as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, is there any objections? Hearing no objections, meeting minutes will be accepted or approved as submitted. Council, we did not have a committee of the whole meeting last week. Therefore, we need to add items 80 through 88 of 2020 to this evening's agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
I move that we add items 80 through 88 to this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Reeves. Council, is there any objections? Hearing no objections, items 80 through 88 of 2020 will be added to this evening's agenda. And we will start with item number 80. Item number 80 through 86 are being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Deputy Finance Director Darlene Huntermark. We'll start with item number 80. Mayor, you need to turn on your mic, please.
I'm on.
There you go. Thank
You
you.
can go, Darlene, with that, just to see how she, I want to see how she does.
Darlene, would you please turn on your mic?
Okay.
Thank you, Darlene.
All right. Thank you. For this ordinance, this is just, it's a document required by OPWC, and it lets them know that we may decide to seek reimbursement for construction costs for this project.
And we would like to get reimbursement for it, but we do have to file this document to set ourselves in a position so we can do that.
Thank you. Council, is there any questions for the administration on item number 80? Hearing no questions, I'll assign item number 80 with resolution number 80 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
A resolution declaring the official intent and reasonable expectation of the city of Oregon on behalf of the state of Ohio to reimburse its sewer construction fund for the sanitary sewer rehabilitation phase 5, part A, CL 11X with the proceeds of tax exempt debt of the state of Ohio.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Pawlov.
I move for passage of resolution number 80 of 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Pawlov.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call, council, on passage of resolution number 80 of 2020?
Mrs. Pawlov,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzek,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
yes,
Thank you, council. Please note that resolution number 80 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. We'll move to item number 81 of 2020. Again, this is presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Deputy Finance Director Darlene Huntermark. Mayor, you want to go directly to Darlene again?
I do. You know what I did? I left my agenda thing at the city, and I wasn't able to put this on my screen and this Zoom meeting at the same time. So
We
Okay,
do have, just
webmaster.
just being honest.
as
Well,
as a note of introduction for Darlene here, this is the annual assessment ordinances that we do, the council does every year that kind of details the way we're going to assess for various expenditures for various subdivisions or projects. So Darlene, take it away.
Okay, actually, I think item 81 is for the
Right.
installation of 5 streetlights.
Later.
And that's in Eden Park Plat 4. Public Service has reviewed the street plans. And this is just to go ahead and get everything squared away with Toledo Edison on the installation.
Thank you, Darlene. Council, is there any questions for the administration on item number 81?
Mr. President,
Yeah, Mr. Zale.
this is not about this ordinance particularly, but who maintains these poles after they're installed? And I say this because of my neighborhood, and the poles look horrible. They need to be painted.
Yeah, Mr. President, I can answer that.
Yeah, Mr. Roman.
Yeah, Mr. Zale, it is Edison. The only ones that are maintained by the city are the ones on Navarre and Wheeling Street, the old decorative poles that we have. Yeah, and we can always put a petition into Edison to do that for your neighborhood, just like if a light was out, Beth Gibson and Streets call them and put it on a list to have it fixed.
Does that involve an assessment for the neighborhood, or is that something Edison should be maintaining?
Well, in terms of painting it, I don't think that would be a part of a normal assessment. I think it is just if a light goes out, pole goes down, or just the power use is what's assessed.
Okay, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
when these lights are, do the citizens in the Eden Park, do they petition to have lights? Is that how that works? Or is it somebody from our public service that goes through and deems or determines that they need the lighting?
Mr. Roman, do you want to take this?
Yeah. Well, Mr. President, Mr. Reeves, this is for a new subdivision, a brand new plat. And for the city to accept it as a new subdivision, a new platted subdivision, they are required to put in traffic lights. It's as a part of our code. So this is just the developer setting up for their plat to become public and to put in lights per the code.
Not traffic lights.
No, this is
street lights. Street lights.
Street lights. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mayor.
And Terry, to further elaborate, that the developer of a subdivision has several options to do that. He could install those streetlights himself or have it contracted out. But they, every time I have had Edison do this because it is assessed to the property owners, and otherwise he has to front the cost.
Okay. Thank you.
Terry, thank you, Mayor.
One other thing, most of those are like a lease. There were like a lease arrangement for those traffic poles and whatnot. So I think traditional maintenance is on them because that's the service they're providing.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, is there anything further on item number 81? Hearing nothing further, I will sign item 81 with ordinance number 81 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the Toledo Edison Company to install 5 100-watt high-pressure sodium vapor acorn-style post top lights on fiberglass poles with underground supply located in Eden Park Plat 4 subdivision, providing for the assessment to benefited property owners and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Is that Mr. Zale?
I move for passage of item 81, 2020 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Second by Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for passage of ordinance number 81 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Polloff,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
yes,
Mr. Wallenbeck,
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 81 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 82. Again, Darlene, would you like to take this?
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. This is one of 5 ordinances tonight. These are the standard ones that we put on every fall with the county. The first one is for the weed cutting, and it's $2,000. And if anybody has any specific questions, I can try to answer those.
Does anybody have any questions on the weed cutting levy and assessment?
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
Now that goes on to the tax duplicate, right? The property tax.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Council, is there anything further on 82? Hearing nothing further, I'll sign item number 82 with the ordinance number 82 of 2020. And ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
levying special assessments for the cutting of noxious weeds in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2019 in the amount of $2,028.75.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
President,
Yes, Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance number 82 of 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 82 of 2020?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Polloff,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes,
Mr. Wallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 82 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 83 of 2020. Darlene, would you like to take this one also?
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. This is for the sanitary sewer maintenance, for maintaining the sanitary sewer lines. It's based on 28 cents a front foot. And if anybody has any additional questions, I can try to answer them.
Thank you. Council, is there any questions for the administration on item number 83? Hearing no questions, we'll sign item number 83 with ordinance number 83 of 2020. And ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of maintaining the sanitary sewer lines in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2019 in the amount of $194,757.62.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Polloff.
I move for passage of ordinance number 83 of 2020.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Polloff. Second by Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 83 of 2020?
Mrs. Polloff,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
yes,
Mr. Wallenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 83 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 84 of 2020. Darlene, would you like to take that one also?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the streetlight ordinance for the property owner's share. We have 136 lighting districts and costs are both fixed and variable. And if
Thank you.
anybody has any, okay, if anybody has any questions, I can try to answer them.
Thank you. Council, is there any questions on item number 84?
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Zale.
Okay, when you say costs are fixed and variable, what exactly does that mean? I don't, because I see these do vary. from year
It
to year.
depends on the district, Tim, but let Darlene go, but. yeah.
Ms. Hunter Mark?
Okay, the Toledo Edison sets a specific rate for each of the lights. The variable part is the usage that shows up on our Toledo Edison bill, and we combine those together.
So if a specific neighborhood has more lights than another neighborhood, that's of course going to be a larger amount of usage, and that's where that's going to come from, correct?
Right, and then the type of light they have too. If it's the, if it's the more decorative ones, they're paying more for those lights rather than the standard light. Because every subdivision might have a different kind of light, so that's the fixed charge that is different based on which type of light they have. Because
that light would use more energy than another light, or because it looks different? Do we know that?
Well, the variable cost is based on the usage. The fixed rate is based on whether you have the Cadillac light versus something else.
Okay, I would think that'd be like a one-time fee, but myself,
Yep.
but
Mr. President,
Yes, Mayor?
Tim, because we didn't purchase those, or the developer didn't purchase those fixtures, it's like a rental agreement for the pole. So we got for the pole and light fixture. So we have the bill is twofold. One is for the product, and the other is for the energy to run that product. So that's what she means. There's two.
oh, okay. When you say that we're actually kind of renting those poles, depending on what type they are, that makes sense then.
Yeah. That's why.
Okay. Because I kind of figure it might be a one-time fee for the poles you put up, and then you're paying for the usage of them.
What I said before is that developer has a lot of options. They're required to have street lights in. So if they were to front the cost, and you could do math and come up with, it would actually be cheaper to front the costs, subcontract it out to put them in, and they're all paid for. But then he has to recollect that on selling the lots. Being that other developers don't do it, then lot prices are a little higher. It's a competitive thing. It's so everybody does that agreement. Edison.
Okay, that makes sense then.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Zale. Council, is there any further questions on item number 84? Hearing no further questions, I'll sign item number 84 with ordinance number 84 of 2020. And ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of lighting the streets and public ways in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2019 in the amount of $302,583.53.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance number 84 of 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second,
Second by Ms. Paula. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 84 of 2020?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzeck,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that item number 84, 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 85 this evening. Ms. Hunter Mark, would you like to tell us about item number 85?
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is to assess property owners for a share of the cost of maintaining various pump stations and retention ponds. If there's any questions, I can try to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter Mark. Council, is there any questions on item number 85 of 2020? Hearing no questions, I'll sign item number 85 with ordinance number 85 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Levying special assessments for the property owner's share of the cost of maintaining the drainage facilities in Heritage Estates, Park Place, Hickory Shores, Cardinal Estates, the Vineyard, the Drake, Foxgate, Bay Meadows, Park Galante, Haley Howell 1 and Haley Howell 2 subdivisions for the year 2019 for a total amount of $22,893.23.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish?
I move for passage of item number 85, ordinance number 85 of 2020.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Davish. Second by Mr. Zale. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call for passage of ordinance number 85 of 2020?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
yes,
Mr. Wallensack.
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 85 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. We'll move to the last assessment, item number 86 of 2020. Ms. Huntermark, would you like to explain that one to us, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is to assess for the cost of unpaid water and sewer accounts within the city.
Thank you. Council, is there any questions on item number 86 of 2020?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Pollock.
I know, I've got a question. So these are unpaid bills that we're absorbing, correct?
Well,
No,
we're going to assess the property.
Mr.
So we're-
Beasley?
oh, go ahead.
Mr. Beasley.
I guess, yeah, these are, you're right, Councilwoman Pauloff. These are unpaid bills, but we're going to actually assess the property and then we will collect it through the property taxes. We don't get many of these. Our department really does, about a 99% job. And maybe it's 98 and change, but we're collecting better than almost any city I know. And there are a few that fall to this point when they end up as an assessment, but it's not a common event here.
So we're going to, so pretty much the city's going to pay it and then assess.
Correct. You got it.
Okay. All right.
Well-
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well-
clarification.
Well, I could add to that.
Mayor?
We're not gonna pay it because we already did it. We delivered it in the service. We're gonna get paid for it.
Right. It's almost like we have to, it's almost like you're going to go to assess this on the bill. So
No,
my question
Almost like
was-
it.
It is.
Exactly like it.
No. Yes, it's exactly like it. But what I was trying to get straight in my head is, so you've exhausted all capability of trying to collect, and now you're going to put this assessment on. So
And remember this, exhausting possibilities, and they're very good at trying to collect at the water billing department. And because we have this option, we're not going to spend hundreds of dollars to collect some bills that are only $100. So by
Right.
putting this process, it's better than trying to track it down and going multiple times after we go through their billing process. And then it's like, hey, we've done it. We've tried to redo it. And now we're just going to collect it this way. This
Okay.
is Plan C. There's A, the original bill, there's B, the secondary bill, and this is Plan C.
Okay, 'cause I mean, say somebody passed away and the house went into foreclosure or what have you. It doesn't go to the person who owned the house. It stays with the property after that when you assess.
It stays with the property owner who is, or that estate. And once again, I remember this goes back years ago, there was a $67 bill that we're trying to collect. And at one time, and Annette Hager was there. It goes, Annette, some of these we will just let go and absorb, versus we're not going to get in a position to spend $300 to try to collect a $67 bill. So we try to do practical things. We try to collect it, and then if it's a substance, then it falls on to collecting it by assessing it on the property tax. So it's a simple procedure, and you maybe trying to think too much into it, but it's
No, because I had this question come up from someone who had purchased a house. And then later they were billed, and they were only in there for a couple of months, and they didn't know why the bill was so high, the water bill. So I just directed them to call the water department to see how that could be rectified. And I was thinking that it went with the house, or does it go with the person that you?
Goes with the person, goes with the,
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
oh,
That's
that's-
all yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
they won't inherit someone else's debt unless they choose to.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Roman.
just if they sell the property as we're trying to do this, we can't collect from the new property owner. It has to stay with the current property owner. But keep in mind, water and sewer utilities are nonprofit, public utilities. We're the only utility that's allowed to do this, where we can put it on their property taxes. No other utility has the ability to do that in Ohio.
okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polliff. Council, is there any further questions on item number 86?
Yeah, Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Seaman.
so like when the auditor collects that money for these various assessments, they keep it clear that money comes back to the city of Oregon then? Because it's not it's not like a regular property tax, it's additional assessment, like for the pumps and so on.
No, Jim, they just give it to who's ever around.
I'm just saying, that's a pretty complicated process, so. I mean,
I'm around.
Back to the city.
What'd you say, Paul?
It's collected by the county and then sent to the
Yeah.
city.
But most of it stays with the county, because most of it's usually is property tax.
No,
Whatever.
Not this assessment.
Yeah, not
the
these.
assessment- 100% of the assessment come back to the city of Oregon.
Yes, I know, but we have to keep an eye on that, though.
Yeah,
It's,
yes.
Mr. President, it's,
Yes, Mr.
Jim,
Beasley.
it sounds murky. It's actually a pretty simple computer function. Our finance department does a good job of
Sure.
putting that package together, and it just goes as an entry. The auditor's office software is dividing this up into, about 100 different taxing districts and all these different assessment rates. It actually works out easier than you might think.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Council, is there any further questions on item number 86? Hearing no questions, I'll sign item number 86 with ordinance number 86 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Levying special assessments for the cost of unpaid water and sewer accounts in the city of Oregon, Ohio for the year 2019 in the amount of $3,384.50.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Polliff.
I move for passage of ordinance number 86 of 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Polliff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for passage of ordinance number 86 of 2020?
Mrs. Polliff,
Yes,
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes,
Mr. Wallenzak,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 86 of 2020 to pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to item number 87 of 2020. This item is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, Mr. Roman?
Mr. President, is this, what is this one?
This is Pepco LLC, the invoice.
For the Kmart property?
Yes. Oil leak.
Yes. So, yeah, I'll start and Mr. Roman may say something. This is a cost that we incurred, do some cleanup, and we believe there's other responsible parties involved that we will be reimbursed for this.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Roman, you have anything to add?
Yeah, Mr. President, just to explain it, the cost here is for a contractor to assist the city on an emergency spill response. It was due to a fuel oil tank, an underground storage tank that was not identified to the city prior to demolition of the Kmart building. So, but it is the first of 2 bills. We will get another bill in the fall from the US EPA for the site cleanup. And just like the mayor said, we will file a claim to seek reimbursement for this work. So,
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, is there any questions for the administration on item number 87 of 2020?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zale?
this, I take it this storage tank was probably underneath the old auto place.
No,
No,
No.
no, it was not.
No, was it? It was not? Okay.
It was actually, they used to heat with heating oil. And so there was just a tank that was the supply for the heating system there, which was, I believe, probably #1 fuel oil.
yeah,
Okay.
it was on the
Okay.
south
Good.
side of the
It was
Kmart
new.
property.
It was.
I would
new.
have anticipated some kind of oil storage from the
It wasn't.
the old auto place, but
No,
but
it was not
okay.
that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Thank you, Mayor. Council, is there any further questions for the administration on item number 87? Hearing no further questions, I'll assign item number 87 with the ordinance number 87 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing the mayor, director of public service and finance director to issue payment to HEPACO LLC, PO Box 746228, Atlanta, Georgia, to provide labor, materials, and equipment for emergency spill response work due to fuel oil leak from underground storage tank located at 2830 Navarre Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
move for passage of ordinance number 87 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second,
Second by Ms. Paulo. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 87 of 2020 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
yes,
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzek,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance number 87 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. We'll move to item number 88 of 2020. Again, this is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Sperry and Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, would you like me to go to Mr. Roman at this?
It would.
Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance is needed to further clarify a driveway encroachment was passed by council last December. The clarification was requested by potential property owners just to understand when and why the city would cancel any encroachment agreement. And the only reasons, or the reasons are really that the only time we would do that is if we were improving the public right of way or installing public utilities or new road and so on. And so they just asked, could we insert that language into the encroachment agreement? I think it was a good idea. I'll probably do it for future encroachment agreements. The change is in Exhibit A. It's in section 3, paragraph E. And it just states that if we cancel the encroachment agreement, which in order to improve right away or install road drainage and so on, they would have to remove their driveway. And it really, most people who do these encroachments just put in a stone driveway. It's just not a big cost. But if somebody wanted to put in a concrete driveway before they make that big expense, they just wanted to know why we would do it. And they're happy with this language change. The sellers would have to come in and re-sign the amended language. But like I said, it's fair to ask for that. A lot of people wonder that. Most people don't invest much in these encroachments, so it's not a big deal. But this, they may do more, so that's why they wanted it. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, is there any questions for the administration on item 88? Hearing no questions, I'll assign item number 8 with ordinance number 88 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor, finance director, and director of public service to enter into an amended encroachment agreement with Elizabeth Jo Rulin, Marianne Powers, Suzanne Bitter, and Nancy A. Barron, 4337 Brown Road, parcel 44-28560, Oregon, Ohio, to further clarify the encroachment agreement authorized by ordinance number 150 of 2019 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance number 88 of 2020 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Zale. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 88 of 2020 as emergency measure?
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenzek,
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance number 88 of 2020 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. That concludes the items for consideration and passage this evening. We'll go to the mayor's report. Mayor?
Well, other than losing the webmaster title, I guess I have no report.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Beasley?
Just three quick notes, two of them legislative. We've had a bad week in Washington when we've been, just so folks know, we were expecting some legislation that would help reimburse local governments for lost revenues, dealing with the challenges with the pandemic and the economic fallout from that. That hasn't happened yet. We still think something will come, but we haven't had a good, I've been in a lot of calls on it. We thought we had it done. It didn't happen. And it really got down to the Senate on its part within itself could not come to an agreement. There was agreement from the House, and I think even the White House would have gone along with one thing, but the Senate didn't have anything and people all walked away. So we're hoping to reconvene and attack this in a few weeks. The other one, the legislative, we're working as part of a coalition on a repeal of House Bill 6. This is the legislation that's had a lot of attention because someone seems to have been charged with bribery.
Yeah.
Paid about $60 million to pass this legislation. This is one of the members remember, this was one of my most frustrating defeats in Columbus. I didn't realize how uneven the playing field was as we fought this battle. And then this is important economically to Oregon. And it's an issue that we have friends on both sides of, but to Oregon's bottom line, this is important legislation. So we're continuing to work on that. I just want to let people know that. Other one, just in terms of, we continue to go slow on spending. You know, we've cut a lot on spending so far this year. In spite of the fact that we've probably, we've taken in a few million less than we did last year at this point, we're only we've only spent about $600,000 more than we've taken in. Some of that is just accounting and we put things off, but we're continuing to look very hard at everything we spend on. Our revenue has fallen by millions. Our spending, we've probably spent about $3 million less than we spent last year at this point as well, just so folks know what we're working on. We're really trying to keep it tight. We're spending about $1.3 to $1.5 million a month for right now, kind of as we level up on projects. So we're looking at those important questions. Finally, the last thing I'll just give a little update on is rec. It is our goal and our hope and our goal to keep rec activities going on this fall. We've had change in direction from the state. We've had change in, we all saw that Clay announced that they were going to cut back, eliminate fall sports, and they came back and said they were going to still go again. In light of that news, it is our hope to, at least in the non-contact sports, to have a program. We might do some things to be more aggressive out there and say, no one's required to wear a mask, but you're not required to be here either. One of the ways that we might be able to keep rec going when a lot of communities are shutting it down is by saying, okay, if you want to be here, just wear a mask. So if you're not actually participating. So we're working through some plans. It is our hope and our expectation that we will have some fall sports, especially non-contact. We might end up not doing things like 5th and 6th grade football and things like that, but we're hoping in rec department, we've talked every day. I've talked to some members of council who've asked. We're hoping to end up with a plan. I know the state is looking at maybe a 6-game like football schedule for high schools and with everyone in the playoffs. Those things are all possibilities. We think it's good for our program to continue to have some sort of youth rec program out here, and we're working to deliver that, and we'll be in touch over the coming week as we try and work through some plans. We don't have it, it's not written in stone yet, but we're working through it because we think it'd be good for us to maintain it.
Mr. Beasley?
Yes.
I had heard word that the governor may come down with a directive tomorrow on sports in Ohio, football in particular. Have you heard anything on that?
I have heard the rumor. I usually get a heads up before a dramatic announcement. I don't have a heads up on this one. So okay. I might get something tomorrow morning and we'll see. It is my hope that we can, I think it's just good for the kids to be out doing it. Appropriate safeguards is what I'd be focusing on, you know, tell the fans, hey, wear a mask. All right, I know you don't want to. That's the sort of thing we will be working on. We would rather do that than tell people no sports. And that's our goal.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Ms. Purpura.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Purpura. Mr. Roman.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Zale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just first of all, a question for Mr. Beasley. And just a brief answer, Mike, on this. Where are we at right now with our contract talks with the part-time firefighters?
We are in the midst of negotiation, and you've been on both sides of this in your career, so we don't do that
Right.
publicly.
Right.
We are working through that process. We've had probably 4 sessions at the chief level, and they'll continue to work through. The issues aren't primarily economic. And we, as the members know, are working to do some things we think we need to do, have a better system that will make a safer Oregon. And that's what all our negotiations are about.
Okay. So with that being said, you know, I'm kind of wondering why there's some things I would like to see the fire department provide for me, for the safety committee. I would like, and I will outline this better for you after the meeting tonight, since we're on a Zoom meeting. So, and some of the things are going to be like, how many calls are answered within how many minutes? Who's answering the calls? Are we getting additional people to answer the calls? Are we still getting just a core group of people that's wearing everybody? They're all worn out because no one's showing up. I don't know if that's still a problem.
It is.
I don't know how the echo unit's working. I think that's probably working okay. But there's a lot of other questions about, you know, are we overlapping calls? Are people answering the right percentage of calls they're supposed to answer? And are we disciplining if they're not? What kind of percentage of people are showing up for training and as they're required? But the other thing that kind of bothers me, and it just kind of hit me today, was I never see an annual report from the fire department.
As opposed to police, yeah.
I used to be involved with the police department annual report. Very well put together generally. There's a lot of things I think would be very beneficial if we saw a fire department annual report. And I don't know why that isn't.
Let me, Tim, first of all, those are excellent questions. And our answer specifically is that we don't think the answer is satisfactory to most of those questions, except for those places where we have people in place who are responding. In too often when we're depending on something on either the echo unit or people who are here, we feel like our service isn't sufficient. And that's what our collective bargaining process is about. And I have some data.
Mike.
Okay. And that's, the reason I bring this up is I'm getting this from people that it's not sufficient.
It's not.
We've made some great strides in things that we had to do to make things better, but we're not there. And
we are convinced that we're not, and that we have some specific steps that we've talked to council on during our budget process, and we think will make us much safer. Some of that involves aspects of the collective bargaining process, and we're in the middle of that now. And we've got to make sure I don't want to bargain in the media, but we understand the importance of getting this right.
Okay.
Mr. President. And Tim, to follow up one other thing, almost every one of those questions that you asked, we have compiled all that data. We have those numbers and everything you asked about. And that's
okay. I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Because I would like to examine that just a little bit.
We even have more than that. We have more than the things you said.
Mr. Zale?
Yeah, because there are other questions I do want to ask about that. Yes,
yeah.
I only gave you a few because we're in a Zoom meeting, so I don't want to flood you with a bunch of questions here. But
Mr. Zale, other council members have asked for that same information in the past also. So I think
Okay.
it'd be wise if we could, if you give it to one, if you can at least supply it to Tim's
Well,
safety.
Well,
Well,
we're in
I-
a sensitive part of the negotiation, so Mr. Beasley could probably more answer that. At what time would be the appropriate time to release that?
Well,
I will
okay,
reach
I
out to-
I understand what you're saying about the sensitive part of negotiations. I understand that very, very well. But at the same time, if we have some real problems here and we nail down a contract that's not going to answer these problems that we have,
That's what we're trying to do.
That's
We're
the
really-
fair question, Tim. We'll get you information. The data is data. Negotiations are separate from data, but the data is data. We can get, I think, what you need, all right?
Mr.
yeah,
President.
I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Ms. Poliff.
Well, I just want to add to that, because when the contract was up before, we were given it and we only had so much time to look it over, and we looked it over and we didn't really discuss it or anything. So if it has to come through council, I want to know what we're looking at right now, what the numbers are. I'd love to see those numbers. I have yet to see any numbers in the past few years. So I want to see what the numbers look like before I decide on if council should be okay with the contract itself. Because, I mean, I think it's important that, because we're getting approached by citizens in regards to it. And, you know, yes, it's a sensitive time, and yes, there is a contract, and yes, that's all between the who's negotiating and stuff like that. But when you're looking at residents and when they have questions and us being their contact between the city, I think that we need to have a little more information than we're given, than just the contract.
I think that's a fair question, and we agree. And we think that the contracts have not, over time, we've moved incrementally. We're looking for a significant change here that is consistent with what we've discussed with council and past budget cycles. And we think we'll get there, and we think it's too important not to. But we got data for you that I think will give you information that's useful to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Jim.
But just like on a last note, one last note that I brought up. Why isn't there an annual report from them that pretty much outlines all this? How much money do we get from the soft billing every year? What is the percentage of calls we do? There can be a section there from the training chief. I don't understand. It just hit me in the head today that I haven't seen one.
That's something we'll take up with our chiefs, and we'll get something.
Okay. It's very helpful from the police department. It's very helpful from the court.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Mr. Seaman.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a real fine turnout at our food truck, Roland food truck farmers market last Wednesday. A lot of people attended, and a lot of people were purchasing things. So we look forward to having an even better one the first Wednesday in September. The St. Francis Gardens has been providing the music, and we're going to have the crepe lady is going to be there in September. So we're looking forward to having a great event. And thanks for everybody that helped so much, like Tina and Bethany and Summer. And we're very helpful in the rec department. So thanks, everybody, and it was a great success. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Mr. Davish? No. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Poliff?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Poliff. Mr. Horniak?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. And I have no report from my standing committee. So at this moment, I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.